do so. Okay. All right, friends, you all have the text, which I sent you yesterday. Confronting Pharaoh. So let's call upon Ethel, last week's birthday girl, to begin. Please, Ethel.
Okay. A twofold challenge. God placed the world within man's heart.
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there. So that's a verse in the book of Ecclesiastes, or in Hebrew, Keheles, composed by King Solomon. God placed the world within man's heart. There's many meanings to that. One of the meanings is that all that exists in the cosmos is reflected within each individual. Each person is a whole world, a microcosm of the whole world. So the world, you mean not just the globe, mind you. I mean the universe, the cosmos. That's the simple meaning almost of the verse. But a deeper meaning he's suggesting here is God placed the world within man's heart. Continue. The
mission of mankind to transform the world into a dwelling for God mirrors the challenges confronted by every individual in cultivating the godly nature of his own character.
Okay, so he said a lot in this sentence. He's saying, God placed the world within man's heart. In other words, he entrusted the world to us. What's the mission? God intentionally created the world incomplete on many levels and wants us to partner with him to complete creation, to perfect creation. What's the objective of creation? As we are all aware, in one simple but essential statement, the purpose of creation, our mission on earth, the objective is to transform the world and make it a home for God. That's the mission. Transform the world into a dwelling for God, make the whole world a place where God is fully revealed here on earth as one is in one's home, sharing himself with us and us with him. That's the objective. So he said in this sentence that that's the collective mission and the individual mission. Each one of us is entrusted with the task of making our own environment an abode for the divine, a sanctuary, a temple, a place where God's presence is manifest and which he shares himself intimately with us as we share ourselves intimately with him. So every person is a world in microcosm. He's saying that the collective mission is reflected in the individual mission. They're inseparable because each one of us is indispensable and integral to the great global mission. It doesn't happen unless each one of us contributes our indispensable part, which makes it, therefore, the whole mission entrusted in each one of us, in each of our hearts or in each of our hands. All right, now continue. Thank you.
There are two dimensions to our personal task of self-refinement. First, we must use the abilities we have been granted for a positive purpose. For example, our ability to feel love should be expressed in love for God and selfless love for our fellow man. And our potential for achievement should be directed to...
Okay, so the first thing is 2 points. The first thing is, he just cites one example, love, but we're all created with all kinds of talents, all kinds of components to our persona, both physical, spiritual, psychological, intellectual, emotional, and so on. All of those components, without exception, are created by God, granted to us, so that we channel them and use them in the service of God and our fellow man. That's the choice. Every single one of these abilities, intellectual, emotional, otherwise, can be used selfishly and destructively, or selflessly and positively. So the mission is, the struggle is, and it's a struggle, the struggle between the selfish drive, which defines our consciousness. Our consciousness is, our conscious self is selfish. And it's a struggle between that and our inner self, which is selfless, which seeks to serve God, our fellow man. Take versus giving. Sometimes we give, but often it's in order to take even more later. That's not giving. Giving is giving when it's just that. And that's the struggle we all face. So the first component is channeling and directing all of our talents and abilities in the way that God has commanded us to. And the second?
And our potential for achievement should be directed to making contributions that are lasting in nature. Each of our abilities should be dedicated towards the most comprehensive good possible.
All right, so you just summarized what I just said. Keep on going.
But there is a challenge which is more fundamental. Every person should ask himself, what am I living for? Is my goal merely self-gratification, or am I living for a higher purpose?
Okay, so I didn't read ahead, so he's elaborating what we just said. So keep on going. Thank you.
Chassidus explains that we have two souls. One is an animal soul concerned only with its own needs and drives. It is not necessarily bad, but it cannot see beyond itself.
Okay, so let's just pause here. When you say animal soul, we don't mean some beast or brute that occupies our body. The animal soul is the conscious human being. We are, on one level, a sophisticated animal. That's the human condition. That's our conscious self. By animal soul, we mean, as aptly put by a philosopher whose name escapes me currently, or it could be I never knew his name, but I just got the quote. And the quote is this: all human endeavor, this person argued, can be distilled into the following formula. It's the pursuit of pleasure and the distance from pain. That's it. And we share that in common with animals. It's just that the animals' pleasures are far more simple, less complicated, and their pains, likewise, are far simpler, less complicated. Animals don't get insulted for the most part. They don't get broigus. Our needs, our pleasures and pains are very complicated and get us often tied up in knots and prisons of our own device. So that's called the animal soul. It's the human soul. It's the way we know it ourselves. Wrapped up in self, we all have an agenda of one kind or another. Some agendas are more refined than others, but at the end of the day, still self-serving. As people will say, I give because it makes me feel good. Well, how selfish is that? That's the animal soul speaking. That's certainly better, I should say, than pillaging, murder, and theft, which also makes one feel good. Obviously, there's a huge gulf between the two. But the bottom line is, it just makes you feel good. Or as we hear endlessly in the course of conversation in contemporary society, whatever makes you happy. That is completely selfish and animal soul. That's one dimension of who we are. As you just said, it's not bad, but just can't see beyond itself. The animal soul can do very nice things. If doing good makes you feel good, well, that's wonderful. You're a nice, cute little animal, but still an animal. But then we have a second soul, which is our supraconscious, which we need to struggle and work to reveal. And what's that? Please continue.
The second soul is an actual part of God, and its fulfillment comes through service, encouraging the expression of this godly nature and revealing the godliness invested in the world at large.
All right, that's a complicated sentence, but what he means is that the second soul, which we call the neshama, is an actual part of God. That's a quote from the Tanya. And what that means is that at its core, it's selfless, diametrically opposed to the animal soul. The godly soul is about service, not about gain, not about reward, not about feeling good, not even about self-actualization and growth. That's all about me, but about the objective truth. There's a God, there's a purpose, there's a mission, and we have the privilege, we've been granted the privilege to be part of this. When I serve you, it's the privilege. The reward is the act itself. That's the reward. The reward of you gaining. The reward is you gained. That's the reward. There's many levels to this, but this level of selflessness has itself many levels. Just like selfishness has many levels, right? Extreme levels, selfishness, kill, murder, take your possessions, or makes me feel good, then I want to grow and I want to be, they're worlds apart, but they're still selfish. Likewise, in selflessness, there's also many levels, and it's the constant struggle of life. So let's continue.
The appearance of conflict between these souls reflects the challenge which man faces to break through his self-concern and reveal his godly core. When this is accomplished, the first task mentioned above, making positive use of the potentials and opportunities we are granted, can be achieved with far greater ease.
All right, we'll leave that uncommented. Good. Thank you, Ethel. Ricky, please, within the macrocosm, the micro and the macro.
Okay, got it. 1 second. These same thrusts are reflected within the world at large. One of mankind's missions is to use the physical world for a positive purpose. Every element of being contains sparks of godliness concealed within it. By using these objects for a spiritual purpose, example, eating a meal with the intent of using the energy generated to serve God, we tap the godly energy invested in the physical and cause it to be vented. This goal has varied means of expression, for it must be achieved in a way suitable to every given situation.
All right, so the first thing he's saying, these are the two thrusts he's kind of talking about here. The first thing is use everything positively. As you just stated, all things have a divine spark, which means they have the potential to be elevated. To use a simple everyday example, eating. Eating can be simply, well, many things. It can be, if one eats like a glutton and eats for simply to satisfy one's palate and pleasure, that's that's indulgent, and that is an example of eating in an unholy way. Actually, I should define that. If the food is kosher and you make a bracha, there's some element of refinement. If the food isn't, then the eating then is not only ungodly, but sinful. If the food is kosher, we make a blessing before, a blessing afterwards, and with the energy we get from the food, we do mitzvahs, then we elevate the food. We redeem the divine sparks in the food. So again, all things, everything comes from God and therefore has a divine spark deeply embedded, waiting to be accessed and redeemed or vented. Strange choice of word, but that's the word he uses. And that's up to us. And all depends on the way we engage the world. How do we use our money? Do we separate 10% and give to tzedakah of our income? Is our money earned in a kosher way? Honestly, not working on Shabbos. Or God forbid, is our money acquired in an unkosher way through deception? God forbid, working on Shabbos or Yom Tov, then our funds and money have not only not been elevated, not being used for a godly purpose, we have degraded it. We have degraded it into something, into the realm and the world of unholiness, of impurity, of spiritual darkness. So that's the choice we face in all the things that we have, everything we own, everything, food, clothing, home, everything, our physical life, our body. Everything. Going to the bathroom, friends. There's a godly way, and then there's another godly way. I can't think of a sinful way, although there could be examples of sinful ways. There's a godly way. How is going to the bathroom done in a godly way? Well, friends, in the code of Jewish law, there's a way a Jew conducts himself in the toilet, you'll excuse me, in the privy. There's a godly way, and there's certainly a blessing we say afterwards. We wash our hands ritually, and there's a blessing we say after each time we have relieved ourselves, thanking God for a functioning body. When a Jew does that, then going to the bathroom is not just something that animals do, secretion. And here I'm a more sophisticated animal, so it stinks further. That's one way. It's more foul smelling. Or if there's an awareness and a gratitude for a functioning body, we conduct ourselves in the bathroom with modesty as defined by Jewish law. It's a beautiful blessing, friends. The blessing we say after going to the bathroom, it's in every prayer book, friends. It's the first few pages. You say it upon awakening after having gone to the bathroom. A beautiful prayer for the functioning of the body, that the orifices that are to be open and closed. We thank God. I don't have to tell you, friends, if you ever experienced, I'm sure you did it in the course of your life, where the orifices are blocked and terrible inability for the body to secrete, it's extremely painful. If this extends, I hope you never experienced it. Thanking God that the body is able to function. So then, the beauty of this, the act of going to the bathroom, not an animal. It's all part of, it's a divine, it's all part of a relationship with God. It becomes elevated to something noble, something godly, and something eternal. Continue. There is, however,
a second, more general goal to nurture selflessness. For worldly existence encourages self-centeredness, and man's task is to break through this barrier and reveal the inner truth.
So he's making 2 points out of it, so I'm just merging them as one. So the one bother to address his second point. First point, we get the general point. Continue.
The words breakthrough are used intentionally, for with regard to self-concern, to borrow a Talmudic phrase, its destruction is its purification. Our desires can be redirected and given a positive orientation. But first, the fundamental selfishness which characterizes worldly existence must be broken.
To rephrase that in simple language, he's saying that the foundation of the service of God has to be one word. One word. And that word is you. That's the most important word in all lexicon. You, starting with you, not I and therefore you. So you are to be used or abused or whatever. No. I mean you first, then I. That's what breakthrough means. Breakthrough means breaking out of our natural condition. I mean, God made us this way. We were born selfish. We're born selfish. That's what God wants. A child is cute, but selfish to the nth degree, just not aware of anything other than I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm wet, I'm whatever, change me. It's more than even change me, because that's like, it's not even a you, it's just me, pure me. Human being is born pure selfish. That's the point. And God grants us intelligence and the godly soul to break out of this breakthrough in his words here, break out of this natural state and unlock our inner self, the inner godly self, whose word is you. That's the language of the godly soul. You, therefore I. It's about you. Me to serve you. That's why I'm here. So I think we mentioned this. It's worth repeating this. Manas Frieden puts it beautifully. In marriage is the ultimate test of this, or the ultimate not a test, but the expression of living a selfless life. He says, when are you ready to get married? When do you know you're ready to get married? When you look in the mirror in the morning, you say, oh no, not you again. When you're tired, he's being humorous and cutesy a little bit, but it's a very profound and beautiful truth. When I'm tired with me, enough with me. then I'm ready to access my godly self, which is selfless, and life is about you. If I get married because I want to be bigger, I want someone that will love me, cook for me, whatever, don't get married. The whole foundation is wrong. And it's not going to work. Be constantly, trying to fix it because it didn't start right. And it's never too late, no matter how long we're married, to make this switch. No, you're not here to serve me. I'm here to serve you. That's a whole different relationship. And of course, the paradox is, truth is always paradoxical, that when one serves the other, life isn't about self. That is the most fulfilling. It's a paradox, the most joyous, the most liberating. It's the happiest person in the world when they're not wrapped up in themselves. As you can see, those who live this way, the happiest. Their nose isn't bent out of joint, but things don't go their way at every turn, like most of us are, to one degree or another. It's all relative. All right, so that's the breakthrough he's talking about. The breakthrough is a simple you, therefore me, not I, therefore you. What's this got to do with the Parsha? Everything. Let's continue. Yeshua.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. I can't access the text.
Oh, really? Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Okay. So who volunteers to read? Brian, you want to try your hand? Do you have the text? You don't have it. You're just listening. Okay. Judge Michelle. Pardon? Volunteer? Did someone say something?
No,
Okay.
I mean, let Michelle do it. Otherwise, if you don't have anybody, Rabbi, I don't mind continuing.
All right, so we'll ask Judge Michelle and then it'll be the final piece.
What the plagues accomplished. Egypt, Mitzrayim in Hebrew, serves as an analogy for material existence as a whole. As such, both motives mentioned above are reflected in the story of the Exodus. The miracles of God wrought in Egypt had two purposes: that Pharaoh should release the Jews, and that when they depart, they would ask every man of his friend and every woman from her neighbor gold and silver articles. In this way, they would drain Egypt of her wealth. This reflects the Jews' effort to refine the sparks of holiness concealed within Egypt, allowing these resources to find positive expression.
So the two things he's saying are, number one, channel for positive purposes. Number two, divine awareness. So that's what happened in Egypt. Mitzrayim means a boundary. It's a word, Mitzrayim. Egypt in English, it's just a name, it means nothing. But in Hebrew, every word means something aside from being just a label or a way by which we identify something. Words describe the words are the soul of that which the words refer to. So Mitzrayim means a boundary. Going out of Egypt means breaking out of boundary. What boundary? This boundary, the whole boundary we're placed in the moment we're born, that we need to transcend and transform. Number one, you've got a talent, use it positively. How do we see this in the story, the physical story of going out of Egypt? They were told, take the gold and the silver out of Egypt and do what with it? Make a temple for God, give tzedakah, do good things. So that's the first thing. B, the second thing.
So that you will be able to tell your children and grandchildren how I have made sport from Egypt, performing miraculous signs there.
The objective is that all of this reveals godliness in the world. Continue, please. Thank you.
Pharaoh is identified with a stubborn boast. I do not know God, and the river is mine, and I have fashioned it, denying God's influence in our world. The fundamental purpose of the plagues was to shatter this illusion, to manifest godliness, so that all could see, and in doing so, to break the pride of Pharaoh and his nation. God persisted in this endeavor until Pharaoh's pride was crushed, and he came in his night clothes to Moshe, entreating God's mercy. Personally, Pharaoh would have been prepared to release the Jews much earlier. He was held back, and the plagues continued because God hardened his heart. Why was this necessary? Had Pharaoh released the Jews earlier, he and his nation would not have been sufficiently humbled. The refinement of godliness concealed within Egypt would have been accomplished, but some of the power which opposed God would have remained intact. The plagues continued until Egypt knew that I am God, and the self-oriented approach which their leader personified was shattered utterly.
So Pharaoh is the ultimate ego. He said, I am the Nile. I made myself complete and utter independence, intrinsically there, valuable. That's Pharaoh, the opposite of the truth. So the plagues continued until Pharaoh acknowledged and had to surrender and was humbled before the truth. Okay, read one more paragraph, please, Judge Michelle.
Reaching to the core, just as the defeat of Pharaoh had to be absolute in a personal sense, the negation of selfishness must also be complete, encompassing every aspect of our being. This requirement is reflected in the name of this week's Torah reading, Bo. The most common meaning of Bo is come, but it also means enter or penetrate. Moshe is commanded to penetrate to Pharaoh's core and negate his strength. As the Zohar states, God caused Moshe to enter room after room, penetrating to the very heart of Pharaoh's palace.
Yeah, so the victory needs to be total. Total victory so that the opposition, the resistance to the divine melts and in the end is transformed. You might say this, that the word Pharaoh, let's see if it comes out at the end. Yeah, he does say it at the end. So let's wait till the end. All right then. So thank you, Judge Shore. Any volunteer, or we call upon our regular readers? Anyone that wants to volunteer? All right, then Ethel read the next piece and then Ricky the last. Thank you.
Okay. Come with me. The command to confront Pharaoh and negate his influence is given to Moshe, representative of mankind, because the negation of selfishness is a fundamental dimension of man's service. Man was given the mission of making this world a dwelling for God, and this is possible only when selfishness is nullified. Haughty self-interest prevents the divine presence from being manifest. And yet, this nullification of self cannot be accomplished by man alone. It requires God's power. For this reason, Moshe shrank at God's command. He realized that the task was beyond him. That is why God instructed him, come to Pharaoh. That means, come to me and not go to Pharaoh.
Come with me, come with me.
Come with me and not go to Pharaoh.
He didn't say go, he said come, implying I'm going with you.
God would confront Pharaoh together with Moshe.
In other words, he's saying, okay, read the next one, the next paragraph, please.
Moshe was not shirking responsibility. He was willing to go, but not with his own resources alone. By hesitating, he invited God's assistance, emphasizing that he would be acting only as an agent and that the power to nullify Pharaoh's pride would be God's.
He's saying as follows. This is all very, beautiful to talk about self-transcendence and surrendering the ego and self-nullification. But is it possible? It's not. I'm born with an ego. I think, therefore I am, to quote Descartes. So what do you mean to negate the ego? That's who I am. It's self, I. I wake up in the morning, I feel I. Everything I know is filtered through the I. So he says, indeed so. One cannot oneself transcend oneself. In the words of our sages, one who is tied up can't untie himself. If you're tied up, you can't untie because the bow's on the outside. You can't untie yourself. Someone else has to. That's what he's saying here. God is saying, the Torah is saying, you have to desire self-transcendence sincerely and work and strive mightily. But the success, the ability to actually do so, God grants. That's why God says to Moshe, not go to Pharaoh, which means confront the ego, but come to Pharaoh. I will go with you and I will help you. That's what God gave us the Torah for. The Torah and mitzvahs are the means by which we truly and utterly transcend the ego, the self, and connect objectively to God and make the world a home for God. We can't do it on our own, because we'll be tethered to self forever. Like I've told you this, and people ask me, Rabbi, I want to be religious and spiritual. Why do I have to follow a set of rules? Why can't I define my own spiritual path? The answer is, Gesundheit, go ahead. But you're still stuck with you. It's your path and you're stuck with you. The goal is the truth. The goal is to connect to God. You can't do it on your terms because you're always bound up to yourself. It's got to be on his terms. Then you connect to him. That's why he gives mitzvahs. That's what come means. Come, I'm going with you. The ability to transform self and the world at large, and even Pharaoh. You can't do it on your own because you are a created, finite being. That's how I made you. But if you connect to me and allow me to come with you, then all limits are transcended and the transformation is possible. And even Pharaoh is transformed. You follow? It's very important, why do you got to do it this way? The tefillin, Shabbos, a whole a million rules. I'll decide. Let me decide. I'll be spiritual and religious. What's wrong? The answer is fine. You can, make your own spirituality, but you're still stuck with you. We are not an iota closer to God, no matter what you do. It's human. It's ego. It's self. It's like any relationship. The only way to connect to someone is on their terms, not on mine. So my terms are left with me. I swallow them up. But to really connect, it's got to be on their terms. How much more so with God? That's the meaning of not go to Pharaoh. Come, I'm going with you, if you let me. That's Torah and mitzvahs. When we observe mitzvahs and we learn Torah, we're letting God come with us in our journey. And that's a completely different journey. Let's conclude. Ricky.
The dynamic of redemption. Penetrating and nullifying self-orientation makes possible the revelation of a positive dimension. And thus the Zohar refers to the house of Pharaoh as the place where all lights are revealed in an unrestrained manner.
Okay, this is so cryptic, but he's trying to say that the word Pharaoh, which means Pharaoh, also has another meaning, to peel back barriers. What a paradox. Pharaoh, the ultimate ego, in his very name, in fact, it's the word we use in circumcision when we peel back the foreskin, the same word. It's called priya, exactly the same word. To peel back a barrier. Pharaoh gets that name, gewaltig geschrien, and says, yeah. Because in Pharaoh's concealment and resistance and his transformation there, and if that's conquered and that's transformed, when Pharaoh acknowledges the truth, when that big, huge ego acknowledges the truth that I am only a consequence of his will, then he becomes the means for the greatest revelation. In other words, the greater the challenges, the greater the resistance, the greater the ego. When transformed, the greater the force for good. The more God's revealed, the more transparent is the truth revealed in the world. Conclude, we need to finish, go ahead.
Carrying this concept further, the exodus from Egypt is connected to the ultimate redemption. Indeed, had the Jews merited, they would have entered Eretz Israel immediately after leaving Egypt. As it is, the entire period from the Exodus until the final redemption is referred to as the days of your exodus from Egypt.
In other words, he's saying they lost the opportunity then. That could have been the first and final redemption. They did not sin with the golden calf and all the sins that follow. But the Rebbe says it's not over. A process began, which we are continuing to this very day. We are still leaving Egypt and all of its guises, collective and individual. And there's an accumulative process. We're very, the Rebbe is saying, it's a result of all the sacrifice and devotion of our ancestors over the millennia. The process of self-transcendence and exodus, faith after Auschwitz, faith in God after the Holocaust is an incredible expression of selflessness that is almost unimaginable and incomprehensible. It's imaginable because we're seeing it, but it's incomprehensible. Jews still believe. And they do. And they're coming back and reconnecting. So over the millennia, the incredible selflessness of our people has been, as a people and individuals, has been expressed. Every boundary imploded, every resistance melted. And so the process of leaving Egypt, we explained before, means the boundaries continues ever since the Exodus. So continue.
Nullifying the selfishness of Pharaoh and breaking through the limitations of Egypt began and begins for each of us as we relive the Exodus, a self-reinforcing dynamic destined to take our nation beyond all natural limitations and lead to the redemption.
Which is where we stand right now. It's the process that began then of breaking, transcending, and transformation began then, has continued, and is reaching its culmination as we stand at this juncture in history. Seems the good Lord is accelerating things by making us realize how fragile we are and how little we know, and how the tiniest component of his world, that's so tiny that we can't even see with the naked eye, continues to baffle, elude, and defeat the greatest intelligence and wisdom, which believed not so long ago that we will conquer all, we have the answer to all. No, not exactly. So this is what's happening now. Hopefully, not hopefully, I'm seeing it. There is a humility, a surrender. The last Egypt is to fall, the last boundary to lie, the shackles that like broken shackles at our feet. And moreover, these shackles beaten, the swords, beaten into plowshares. That's transformation in a world perfected and redeemed. Thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful week.
Rabbi, can I ask you a question?
A quick question, because I have another meeting coming in another minute. But go ahead.
Yeah. I just finished the book. It's called The Jewish Wisdom for Business Success. And since you have spoken today about transformation, there is a story about, it's called, in Talmud, there is a story in chapter Brachot 28a about Rabban Gamliel. And Rabban Gamliel, he only allowed the students whose inside was like their outside to enter the house of the study. And when we transform ourselves, there is a state, it's called penimi. How can we achieve this state when our inside is the same that our outside? And how we achieve this?
Okay, so I'm going to have to address that. You know what? You text me or email me and I'll answer you. I'll write back to you, okay?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry.
We're going to conclude the class, and everybody have a wonderful week. Shavuot Tov.
Shavuot Tov. Yeshua.
Thanks for joining, folks.
God bless you.
Okay, I'm going to close this, Randy, and reopen it, okay?